All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're digging into a really provocative analysis from a source that makes a claim that is, well, pretty stunning. It argues that a single province in China might just have the capacity to take on the entire United States in an all-out war. I know it sounds completely nuts, right? But the way the argument is built is fascinating. So let's break it down.
And here it is, the central claim, right at the top. It translates to, America's military power is not as good as Shandong's. I mean, wow. That's a bold statement, to say the least. It's obviously designed to get your attention. For the next few minutes, we're going to unpack exactly how the source even tries to justify saying something like that.
The whole argument really starts here, with raw, physical, industrial power. The source's main point is that in a long, grinding war, it's not things like finance or tech services that win. It's the ability to make stuff. A lot of stuff. And it claims that when it comes to that, Shandong is in a league of its own. This number, 41, is the foundation for everything else. The source claims Shandong is the only place on the planet that has all 41 major industrial categories as defined by the UN. Now, what does that actually mean? In theory, it means they can make literally everything they need, from start to finish, without relying on anyone else. It's this idea of total self-sufficiency, which, you can imagine, is a huge deal in wartime. So, let's look at something absolutely critical for any war machine: steel. The source claims that Shandong's annual crude steel output is around 80 million tons. So what does that compare to? Well, get this. It's about the same as the entire United States. One province, one country. That one-to-one comparison is really used to drive home the insane scale of its heavy industry.
And when it comes to the Navy, the source claims the gap is even bigger. It estimates Shandong's shipbuilding capacity is a staggering 40 times greater than that of the United States. Think about that. In a war where you're constantly losing and needing to replace ships, a gap like that, if it's true, would be an absolutely game-changing factor. It's not just about scale, though. The source points to what it calls incredible adaptability. It tells this honestly kind of wild story about a factory that makes noodle machines that just decided to start building helicopters because they figured the equipment was similar enough. Now, that's probably an exaggeration, but it's used to paint this picture of an industrial base that can switch to making military gear with incredible speed.
And the numbers just keep coming. The world's biggest aluminum cluster, which is essential for aircraft. Agricultural output that the source says is on par with the whole U.S., meaning it can feed its own people and its armies. It uses more than 60% of the industrial electricity of the U.S., and its production of industrial robots almost matches America's entire output. The picture they're painting here is one of an absolutely overwhelming industrial machine.
So you've got all the factories, all the materials. But is that really enough to win a war? I mean, the source itself acknowledges that wars are fought by people. And that brings us to the second big piece of this whole argument.
Right, so here the analysis shifts gears. It moves away from the industrial hardware and starts talking about the cultural software for war, something it argues has been forged over thousands and thousands of years.
The source draws a really sharp contrast here. It points out that the United States is, just over 200 years old. But Shandong's history of conflict goes back millennia. We're talking about the home of Sun Tzu, who wrote The Art of War, all the way to being a key battleground in the 20th century. The argument is that warfare isn't just a subject for them, it's baked into the very DNA of the region.
And this history, according to the source, isn't just ancient history. It's backed up by some pretty serious modern-day numbers. It talks about over 15 million skilled workers and a manufacturing workforce about the same size as the entire U.S. Plus, a strong education system and this powerful military tradition. It claims that 1 out of every 10 soldiers in the entire Chinese military comes from Shandong.
To really try and capture this spirit, the source uses this quote. It's meant to show this idea of total societal commitment to a war effort. The idea that a population is willing to sacrifice literally everything for victory, which is a powerful, if you can't really measure it, factor in any long war.
Okay, so we've got the industrial engine, and we've got the human fuel. In this next part, the analysis combines them. It starts projecting what a fully mobilized Shandong could theoretically churn out for a war.
Now, before we get to the really eye-popping number, we have to understand what we're measuring. The source uses a modern mechanized brigade as its yardstick, based on what we're seeing in the war in Ukraine. So you're looking at about 4,000 soldiers with all their tanks, armored vehicles, and artillery. Just keep that unit in your head.
And here is the projection. The source claims that in 1 year of full mobilization, Shandong alone could produce and equip 150 of these new brigades. That's an army of over 500,000 soldiers fully trained and equipped from scratch every single year. It's just a staggering number to think about.
And the equipment for all those troops? Well, the projections here are just as wild. 500,000 tons of warships, 20,000 armored vehicles, over 2,000 aircraft, 200,000 missiles, and more than 30 million artillery shells a year. The point is to paint a picture of an absolutely unstoppable wave of military hardware. So, after laying out all this data, all these numbers, the source moves to its big conclusion. It uses the case of Shandong to make a much bigger argument, one that challenges the very way we think about national power in the 21st century.
And the argument really boils down to this one core idea, that there are two different models of national power. The U.S., it claims, has become a company nation. It's amazing at finance, services, intellectual property. Shandong, on the other hand, is what it calls an industrial state, built on making things, human capital, and the ability to take a punch. One is optimized for peacetime, the other for total war.
And here's the final punch. The analysis concludes that while that company nation might be wealthier and look more advanced in peacetime, in a long, grinding war of attrition, the sheer productive power and resilience of the industrial state would be what matters, and ultimately, it would win.
And the source ends its whole analysis with this final defiant question. It's a rhetorical jab, really, meant to make the reader question everything they thought they knew about American military and economic dominance.
And that's really where this leaves us. We've just walked through one very specific and, very provocative argument. So the question for you is, does focusing purely on industrial capacity like this reveal a real blind spot in how we normally analyze national power? Or does this kind of thinking get so obsessed with factories and steel that it dangerously overlooks all the other things that define modern war, like advanced tech, global alliances, and strategy? That's the big question this analysis leaves hanging in the air.